everyone, Heather Cuesta here. This is Milestone 2, Task 1. Our aim here is to study the elements of art and principles of design. This set of vocabulary words right here, 7 elements and 7 principles. Okay, we're building on our progress from Milestone 1, where we learned to identify the media of a work of art, that is what it's made from, and its subject matter. So we're moving on to this intensive study of the elements and principles. Okay, so you might think of the elements as the actual marks that an artist makes on a surface, okay? So this could be line, color, value, texture, shape, form, and space. The way these marks are arranged, we often refer to as a composition. Okay, and we describe this composition using this set of words here known as the principles of design. Now it's very important that we're all on the same page here using the very same vocabulary words, because you're going to use the same set of words throughout the course and throughout your time here at the Art Institute. So when you move on to your studio classes, you'll be providing critiques for your own work and for your classmates, and you'll want to use the exact same set of vocabulary words. So for example, in some art schools you might find the word dominance, but here we like to use the word emphasis. So let's all get on the same page here and start using these 14 vocabulary words. Okay, turning now to our painting. Okay, we're looking at the Adoration of the Magi by Gentile da Fabriano, painted in 1423. Okay, so you were asked to begin by describing what was the most dominant element in this work of art. For most of you, it was its color, and for most of you, this color was gold. Okay, so let's take a look at this painting and think about the many ways that the color gold functions in this work of art. Okay, so we find gold here in, of course, the frame. We find it in the background. We find it in the halos. And then we find it distributed through some of these garments. So gold is used in a very decorative manner. Gold is not used in a way that organizes and defines the depth of this painting. It's not really used to describe space. It's used in a very decorative manner. Now, this is a very late medieval painting. It's not quite what we consider Renaissance yet. There's some dawnings of Renaissance art here in the naturalism of the faces, but for the most part this work is still very medieval, but it's very late medieval, painted in 1423. Okay, so what we have is gold in the background. Why would there be gold in the backgrounds instead of a blue sky? Well, for the medieval artists, this gold served the function of lifting objects out of the everyday world into the realm of the ethereal, the otherworldly, in this case the heavenly Jerusalem. So we have these gates here that represent the Jerusalem here on earth, but it's lifted out of this earthly realm into this ethereal world that's indicated by the gold. Okay, we have this fancy gold frame, again, that lifts this ordinary scene into something of the extraordinary, something extremely special. Now, also think of the viewers. Back in 1423, the average viewer wouldn't be inundated with images the way we are today. Images were powerful. Images were very special. In order to see something like this, most people would have to go to their church and see this piece on the altar of their church, a very special place. And they would contemplate the beauty of this image and be moved by it. And also keep in mind that that images such as this had the function of storytelling for a largely illiterate audience. However, this audience would be well versed in the stories of the Bible. Right here, the story that they see in front of them in paint, it would be very clear to them that this was the story that they had heard about from Matthew chapter 2. This is the story of the birth of Christ and the priests from Persia journeying all the way through Jerusalem over to Bethlehem to adore the child. Okay, so we have mentioned that the gold background serves a number of different functions. Now visually it creates a flattened effect. So we don't have this space here in the background is the same color as this gold in the foreground, this gold in the halos, this gold in the frame. We're having a little trouble separating the frame from the image. It's all kind of blending in one. We're not seeing an attempt at Renaissance naturalism, that is the attempt at replicating something of an optical correctness, something of a clarity of the way our eyes actually see things. This medieval artist was far more concerned with storytelling, and he uses the elements and principles to lead our eye in a specific chronological order through this image. Okay, so this gold has a flattening effect because it is used in the foreground. It's also used in the background. Gold also has this reflective quality. It doesn't photograph well. Let's see. There we go. It doesn't photograph very well. So again, it confuses the space here, and it's creating this something that looks very flat, very decorative. The artist has arranged this space in something that we would call a continuous narrative. So we have the Magi over here. They're traveling to Jerusalem. They're re-emerging through the gates, and they're traveling along this road here to Bethlehem to see the birth of Jesus. Okay, so how has the artist used the elements and principles to direct our eye through this space? We begin our story over here with the 3 Zoroastrian priests. They're over here in the regions of Persia, and they've seen the star. They're gazing at the star up in the sky. You could see that if you look closely through one of the detail views. And then our movement moves this way. So some of you mentioned how the figures are all sort of looking the same direction. So that's one of the ways that the artist is directing the movement in this direction. Also take a look at this homogenization of the shapes and the scale. We have all of these tiny little heads, these horses, everything is in a very similar scale back here, okay? And it's sort of creating this implied line through here. Line is one of our elements. Line can take a variety of characteristics. In this case, this line is just sort of the sum total of all of these shapes. This line is implied, it's not drawn there. Okay, so our figure here, our entourage, they're moving up through these gates here into Jerusalem. As the story goes, they're going to meet up with King Herod, and they're going to explain their purpose for visiting Jerusalem. When King Herod hears that there is a rival king to be born in his kingdom, he is naturally unhappy. But he doesn't let that on to the priests. In fact, he tricks them. He requests that the priests go and find this child and then report back to him. But the priests are wise men, of course. They're seers. They know what Herod's up to. So they go on about to Bethlehem, but they leave by a different route. So they've tricked Herod, and they've not gone back to report to him where baby Jesus is located. So anyway, as the story goes, the artist is directing our eye once again in this direction. Okay, so the people are all sort of moving this way. Their heads are sort of oriented in this direction. And again, we have that sort of implied line. We have this homogenized scale here. All of these heads are sort of in the same scale. Even the horse heads aren't that much different. These heads that are in a greater distance in a very medieval fashion aren't made tiny or out of focus. In a very medieval fashion, again, the preoccupation is with storytelling, not with depicting naturalistic space. These heads are still very close in scale to these that are closer to the viewer in theory. Okay, so our movement then moves this direction. Okay, and we have our Zoroastrian priests again showing up right here. So they've been here, and they've been all through, and now they're showing up here. Even their star is moved. Their star was back here, now their star is here. So this device of telling a story by repeating these elements is called continuous narrative. So our final destination in this narrative is, of course, right here, Mary and the baby Jesus sitting on her lap. The Zoroastrian priests have come to admire the child. And now let's take a look at some of the other compositional elements here. All right, notice how we've been talking about the movement quite a bit. The movement has moved us sort of in this direction, right? Okay, now what's going on? We're sort of moving up through these stacked heads. Even the location of this darkness in the cave is sort of creating a frame around the main figure. And your eye still kind of moves around, follows his gaze, and again, we get right back to our main group of figures right here. Okay, now take a look at what this shape sort of looks like. This was mentioned in your readings. I'm going to show you something in just a second. Okay, take a look at this. This is called the Fibonacci spiral. This is a very powerful compositional strategy. It was used quite a bit in the medieval period, particularly in medieval manuscripts. Entire pages were set up with this ratio of 1 to 1.618. So it's a mathematical ratio, and if you plot it out geometrically, you get something that resembles this spiral here, right? And it's repeated all throughout nature. The most common example of the Fibonacci spiral is its expression in the chambered nautilus shell, but we'll also see it in the petals of roses in the scale of how they become bigger as they, this is not a rose by the way, this is a cactus, but in any case, you'll see the Fibonacci spiral expressed in a rose. You see it in seed patterns quite a bit. You can see this sort of spiraling. You can see it on this fiddler fern. Nature is literally covered with the Fibonacci spiral. And you'll find that mathematical ratio expressed in genetics as well, if you were to study that. So this is a very, this powerful ratio was known to the medieval artists, and they used it quite a bit. Okay, we've talked about the implied lines in this painting. Let's talk about line and the characteristics of line. So line can take a number of forms. Line can be very controlled. Line can be frenzied. Line can simply be an edge, right here, okay? Line can take a number of forms. Line can be, in the example of, let me zoom in just a second here. Okay, so for example, we can see these lines here are actually inscribed. These lines are actually carved into a particular surface that we call gesso, and this gesso has been coated with gold. So we have this reflective surface, but where these lines have been carved, or where these incisions are made, we have something that looks like lines. Okay, now take a look at the face. Right here around the jawline, the artist has used value, transitions in value, that is the degree of lightness to darkness, to imply the contour of this face. So the artist, in a more progressive fashion, has not resorted to a simple linear outline of the face. He's using light and value to imply this line. Okay, whereas in certain areas, the artist is again drawing these distinct lines, such as in the curls here. So there's a number of different implied lines and actual lines in this work of art. Okay, we've mentioned a couple times that the preoccupation of this artist was with storytelling above all else. So let's take a look at some of these more medieval characteristics, such as these halos. Take a look at these halos. If you were in a drawing class and you were asked to draw a halo, you would probably come up with something like this, an ellipse, something that's drawn in perspective. But these flat gold discs behind the head, this is still very medieval. But again, the artist was not concerned with the way things look. The artist was concerned with telling a story so that the viewer would automatically be able to identify the saintly figures by attributes such as these gold halos. Okay, another method that the medieval artists used to depict space is this method of stacking. Notice how these heads are sort of stacked on top of each other, and the heads that are higher up on the picture plane are perceived to be further back. Okay. All right, so we've identified some of our most prominent elements, and we've identified the Fibonacci spiral. There are many more elements and principles that can be identified here, so keep looking, keep studying, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with next. So thank you very much for your work here.